What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, the new anime film set in the Lord of the Rings universe some 183 years before the events of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings film trilogy. This film was created with the sole purpose of Warner Brothers and New Line maintaining the film rights to the Lord of the Rings franchise that they have, because of course, as we know, they're now developing new live action films with Peter Jackson and Andy Serkis back in the fold. So War of the Rohirrim is very much brand extension to the literal definition. This movie was specifically made as an anime film to keep the costs down, because the goals of this production is largely about franchise management. So this movie is going to open to, mid single digit millions this weekend, like many anime films do. And even after all its box office returns, this movie will be kind of written off as to the budget of the next Lord of the Rings films, because that's just the point of this piece of art. Despite its brand management reasons for existing, I think The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim is okay. This film doesn't have a whole lot of depth character-wise, doesn't really surprise you too much with its plot, but if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you love the world of Middle-earth, there will be some fan service for you here. Spending time with Rohan, being in Edoras and Helm's Deep. It's familiar yet comforting. Unfortunately, this movie does not look very good at all. It was made cheaply, and it definitely looks it. Helm's Deep is the setting of one of the most iconic action sequences in film history, so it's nice to spend time there again, even if this, of course, pales in comparison to the original. This film was directed by Kenji Kamiyama, who is probably most famous for his work with Ghost in the Shell, but he actually directed my favorite episode of Star Wars Visions, The Ninth Jedi. But unfortunately, I don't think he was given a whole lot to work with this film. The $30 million budget is small for a reason, and the animation, it's hand-drawn on top of like digitally captured mocap. It looks a bit stilted at times. Whenever there's a lot of action or movement, it just looks kind of old school. But the lack of fluidity, I think, really stands out. Some of the more painterly scenescapes can certainly evoke the hand-drawn sensibilities of Studio Ghibli, but anything with a lot of movement doesn't really look too good. Character-wise, our lead Hera, just typical headstrong female protagonist, pretty familiar. The main antagonist of the film, Wolf, Dunlading, he initially comes across as almost like a Kylo Ren type character, but really just kind of devolves into a kind of senseless one-note villain by the end. The best performance in the movie is actually Brian Cox voicing Helm Hammerhand, one of the famed kings of Rohan. In fact, this whole movie is based on a single page in the Return of the King appendices referencing this famous Rohan king. And now as a result, we learn how Helm's Deep got its name. That was not actually the original name. And I think Cox does a pretty good job with the voice work. He's quite gregarious, and often the animation doesn't really follow his performance quality. It's fun to see a legendary figure of Middle Earth. Honestly, I think one of my favorite sequences, again, to kind of invoke Studio Ghibli, you have a Muma kill that's kind of crazed, kind of deranged, very reminiscent at the beginning of Princess Mononoke. In fact, our lead character, Hera, very similar to Nausicaa, albeit lacking a lot of that depth. Again, nothing super original that you get here. Is it fun as a Lord of the Rings fan to watch a Mumakil get killed by a Watcher? The squid monster you see in Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah, that was pretty sick. As someone who's seen both of those creatures independently of one another, it was cool to see them interact. Again, we play a lot of the hits here. We get to see the Eagles. Saruman makes a cameo at the very end. Gandalf gets name dropped. We see orcs collecting rings, a lot of Leo pointing at the screen type stuff. Even if ultimately I really knew how the plot was going to resolve at just about every turn, I did enjoy the ride. Like I liked watching Hera's brothers, get taken out, even though they're not much of a character at all, either one of them. Watching them get defeated and watch Helm and Hera's, Rohan get defeated and sealed up at Helm's Deep was pretty cool. due to the animation being pretty shoddy, I don't think there's any like one like action set piece that really stood out to me per se. You know, hearing the Rohirrim theme, iconic from Two Towers, of course, listening to Rohan characters yell death as they ride out to battle, it doesn't hit the same when you're not hearing it from Bernard Hill in live action. Again, all this goes without saying. You know, in theory, the Lord of the Rings could be ripe for numerous animated films, the way Warner Brothers makes a ton of DC animated movies. In theory, that would be a good fit, you know? But I just don't think there was really a lot of effort put into making this anything beyond passable. You know, like this pales in comparison to Rings of Power, the Hobbit trilogy, and of course the originals. So, you know, it is what it is. I feel like I have a feeling this will kind of be satisfying to some viewers, again, just from the fan servicely taking it for what it is angle. Like, it's enjoyable to the fan. It's certainly not super welcoming or groundbreaking to someone who's not much of a fan, though. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim? Were you pleasantly entertained, if not overtly impressed, like me? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.